welcome to the third and long weekly recap, the show where we cover the NFL and fantasy football. As always, we'll be going over the winners from the TNL Dynasty League, share some words from our biggest loser about their loss. Then we'll talk week 7 in the NFL, from the return of D-Hop on Thursday night to a running back showdown to finish off the week. From there, we'll move into the injuries that will be impacting the NFL and fantasy teams, and finally, we'll look ahead at week 8, where only 2 teams will be resting up. Congrats to our winners, starting off with unsolicited Dak picks. A surprising win for the now 3-4 team. Dak picks had some unlikely players to thank for their win. Raheem Mostert decided he would be better served as a receiving back as he brought in a touchdown through the air, while Tyler Boyd benefited from the huge game Joe Burrow put up, catching for a touchdown and putting up just over 150 yards receiving. Then we had Riley Reid option, putting up some big points thanks to receivers and his defense. Jamar Chase brought in 2 touchdowns while putting up 130 yards, and Juju Smith-Schuster is giving KC fans no reason to miss Tyreek Hill as he hauled up a touchdown as well as capped off a 124-yard day. Then you had the Cowboys defense that made the Lions look like kittens. 2 interceptions, 3 fumble recoveries, and 5 sacks. Defenses do win championships, and they can definitely help you win your weekly matchup. The Cleveland Flex offenders add another tally to the win column. Their team was led by Austin Eckler, who managed to find the end zone twice. While his contributions were enough to help the Chargers win their game, it was plenty for the Flex offenders, who now moved to 4-3. Knocking on heaven's door might have had a certain tight end looking after them this weekend as the NFL celebrated Tight Ends Day, as their team was able to stand up to some stiff competition. Another great performance by Patrick Mahomes, who threw for 423 yards and 3 touchdowns, and a hungry Vegas running back in Josh Jacobs, who got himself a hat trick, were the key players that helped this team open the door to another win. A surefire playoff contender, Gum Soup, capped off another great performance. One of the biggest games of the season, Joe Burrow threw for 4 touchdowns on 481 yards. Then Kenneth Walker III found himself running into the end zone twice. Now that the rest of his players rostered can put up huge points, 39 and 28 respectively, Gum Soup could be displaying a trophy in his home all next year. And finally, the good old days were able to topple one more time a matchup that came down to Monday night's game. Thanks to the use of Ramondre Stevenson as a receiving back this game, the feared return of Harris didn't play in one more time's favor, as Stevenson was the favorite and gave good old days the points he needed to secure a win. Congrats to all our winners once again. With week 8 already upon us, it's easy to see who will be making the playoffs, disregarding any potential late runs. And with one such team who will be looking to string some wins together to avoid being last after the regular season is our This week, our biggest loser is Let's Get Swifty, who for all intents and purposes got the perfect score, 69. This is a team that is struggling to stay healthy, usually finding their players being mentioned on our injury segment. Metcalf, questionable. DeAndre Swift, out. Matt Ryan, while not his primary QB, out. The list goes on and on. 25 points sat on the bench for Let's Get Swifty as McCole Hardman was able to find the end zone 3 times in the Chiefs game. Now this is to be suspected for weeks to come, or would it even be enough to help him find a win? I reached out for comment and he had this to say. Statistically this year in the NFL, scoring has been an all-time low since the last 10 years, so my fantasy season is hurting because lack of production as well as injuries. Hopefully my players get healthy and teams in the NFL start being more productive so my season can turn around. What a statement by Let's Get Swifty manager, and I can agree on the health of his team. They need a hospital and round-the-clock doctors to nurse his team back to health. As for production, perhaps playing better matchups would help him put up more points. Moving into our NFL recap, NFL fans were treated to an eventful Thursday night game which kept them awake and glued to their TVs. First and foremost, we had the return of DeAndre Hopkins after serving his 6-game suspension. He made an instant impact to the Cardinals offense, along with the offensive coaching staff. Fantasy managers who took him away can appreciate. Now, it takes some time for the Cardinals offense to really get going. They can rest easy if their defense continues to perform the way they did. 3 total interceptions, 2 of which being pick sixes, while they still allowed Andy Dalton to throw for 30 for 47 for 361 yards and 4 touchdowns. They helped make the difference in the 42-34 win. Into our Sunday games, we had the Browns take on the Ravens. Now, much can be said for the quarterbacks for these two teams. Brissett throwing very well, 22 for 27 for 258 yards, but couldn't find a final pass. And Jackson being relatively quiet, throwing 9 for 16 for 120 yards. It was the running backs that took center stage. For the Browns, you had your usual suspect Nick Chubb running for just over 100 yards and a touchdown, but it was Gus Edwards who had the RB1 performance, with J.K. Dobbins being out for the foreseeable future. A solid first game back, 16 carries for 66 yards and 2 touchdowns. Ravens took the win 23-20. Now, could we be seeing a changing of the guard? Both veteran-led teams, the Tampa Bay Bucks led by Brady and Green Bay Packers led by Rodgers, both took another loss. We got our first look at the Panthers team without CMC, and it could very well be what they needed. No longer bundling their play through the star player, the Panthers seem to play more like a team. The Panthers now moved to 2-5 and added fuel to the dumpster fire that could lead to Brady's actual retirement. On the other side of things, the Packers lost a close one to the Commanders. They didn't face a similar pass rush as they did the week prior when they faced the Jets, Rodgers throwing 23 for 35 for 194 yards and 2 touchdowns, and their defense brought plenty of pressure to boot, not allowing the Commanders to work down the field and get anything more than field goals. A spectacular catch by Aaron Jones and a final play attempt to work their way into the end zone wasn't enough as the Packers lost this one 20-23. In another return game, we had Dak Prescott donning the badge again as he led the Cowboys to victory against the Lions. His first game back, Prescott managed to throw 19 for 25 for 207 yards and a touchdown. The ball was spread pretty evenly between receivers, although fantasy managers were quite disappointed to see that Peyton Hendershot was the recipient of the only thrown touchdown. Tony Pollard led the way in yards, 83 on 12 carries, but it was Zeke who received the spoils as he found that end zone twice. In my hot take game of the week, the Raiders proved me wrong and secured their second win of the season, beating the Texans 38-20. Derek Carr put up solid numbers, 21 for 27 for 241 yards and a touchdown, while Josh Jacobs left everything he had on the field rushing for 3 touchdowns and putting his third straight game topping 100 rushing yards, a true top 5 running back. And we capped things off with the Patriots hosting the Bears. Going into this matchup, a lot of people speculated this would be a battle of the running backs as we got the return of Damian Harris, joining an on-fire Ramondre Stevenson facing a very run-heavy offense in the Bears. The game proved to be just that, but the Bears managed to throw the ball more effectively. So much in fact that a struggling Mac Jones, who was returning from injury, was taken out and replaced by Bailey Zappi. Could we be seeing another Bledsoe Brady situation in New England? Regardless, the change in quarterback wasn't enough to get the Patriots going, and the Bears took home the win 33-14. Week 7 injuries are not for the faint of heart, as we'll see teams and fantasy managers alike looking to replace some important players on their rosters to ensure that they can still compete. After trading away their RB1, the Panthers may have lost another running back as Chuba Hubbard left the fourth quarter due to an ankle injury. The team stated that he could have returned to the game, but they went with a cautious approach. The Browns doubled down on tight end day and lost both of theirs Sunday. David Njoku exited with an ankle injury believed to be a high ankle that will see him being a week-to-week player, while Pharaoh Brown is being evaluated for concussion. Mike Boone, running back for the Broncos, is joining Javonte Williams on IR thanks to an ankle injury. Expect him to miss at least the next 4 weeks, which sees the Broncos adding Marlon Mack to their practice squad to add an additional backfield option. Another tight end day injury, Dalton Schultz of the Cowboys is reportedly fine after tweaking his knee in the Cowboys' win on Sunday. Something to monitor, as it might be best for the veteran tight end to get some rest and risk of really hurting his knee. One of our favorite lists of the season, the concussions list, takes another as Amon-Ra St. Brown joins and begins his journey back to health. As if Rodgers wasn't struggling enough, Allen Lazard left their game due to a shoulder injury. Matt LaFleur didn't say much in regards to the injury except that they'll see how it is throughout the week. But a tough matchup against the Bills Week 8, Rodgers and Packers fans will hope they have their number 1 receiver. The Texans have lost a growing asset in their offense as Nico Collins left the game with a groin injury. No telling as of right now when he'll be back. And just when you thought we couldn't have any more ankle injuries, wide receiver Mike Williams of the Chargers is said to have sprained his. The Chargers are on a bye week, so hopefully the added time off will help his ankle heal. No love for tight ends on Sunday as the Giants' Daniel Bellinger suffered an eye injury and will be seeing an ophthalmologist later this week. Perhaps the biggest loss for the league this week. And for fantasy managers, Breece Hall of the New York Jets is suspected to have torn his ACL, which will see the star rookie running back missing the rest of the season. To add insult to injury, the Jets also lost receiver Corey Davis due to a shoulder injury. Now, if you're in a dynasty league, then your Breece Hall pick will still hold value in the long run. But if that's not the case, they did just acquire James Robinson to help strengthen their running back core. The Seahawks will be missing one of their stars, DK Metcalf, for the next couple of weeks as he will look to bounce back from a knee injury he sustained during their game on Sunday. Tannehill, quarterback for the Titans, was seen nursing a boot and was quoted saying his ankle doesn't feel great, but will be doing everything he can to start Week 8. From the same game, Matt Ryan looks to be benched as he is nursing his shoulder back to health, which opens the door for Sam Ehlinger, who will be running the offense for the rest of this season. And finally, we wrap things up with another tight end and concussion as Cole Turner for the Commanders was ruled out against the Packers and will be added to the list. Now that we made it through the injuries, let's look ahead at some Week 8 games and matchups in our league. To start things off, let's go over the teams that will be on their bye. This week, only 2 teams will be getting the extra rest. The Chargers will get a chance to, dare I say, recharge after their loss to the Seahawks, and the Chiefs will be looking to sit back and relax as a reward for their win against the Niners. Starting Thursday night, we have the Ravens traveling to face the Bucs, coming off back-to-back losses. Brady and the Bucs will hope to have a bounce-back game against a defense that is allowing 23 points per game. As for the Ravens, they can expect a defense that forces them to throw the ball. They average 156.3 yards a game rushing, so a stacked box would force Lamar to throw. Both of these defenses should be looked at as streaming options, as the Ravens have a combined 14 interceptions and fumbles, while the Bucs secondary has to face an offense that's recorded just 189.7 passing yards per game. Sunday will hopefully be treated to some fun matchups. We'll see a meeting of wide receivers as the Vikings take on the Cardinals. We'll see if any adjustments were made during the Vikings bye week to hopefully beat the odds, as Kirk Cousins has a record of 1-3 coming off of byes. As for the Cardinals, Kyler Murray is coming off his best QB rating, a positive change most likely due to his number 1 receiver being back on the field. The Steelers will be traveling to the city of brotherly love to face the Eagles. This electric offense will be looking to keep their undefeated streak going. With tools both in the air and on the ground, the Steelers defense will have their hands full. But don't count them out before the game even starts. The Steelers were able to get by the Bucs and were able to keep Miami scoreless in the second half of their game, but couldn't do any of their scoring of their own. With nothing to really lose in the game, I'd expect to see a gritty Steelers offense trying to run through Harris while spreading the ball between their receivers. We'll get to see the fallout of Monday night's game and see how Belichick decides to move forward with his offense. No reports yet as to which QB will take the job, or perhaps they'll run some new double QB offense. Who knows? As for the Jets, this will be their first week with no Breece Hall, who has been nothing but the utmost importance to their offense. With their new acquisition of James Robinson proved to be a good move, does Zach Wilson look to throw the ball more? While it would be safe to play the running backs, a switch of offense for the Jets could see the receivers getting more looks. Another New York team that has been all the talk, the Giants, will look to continue their surprising run of form against the Seahawks. Danny Dimes will look to feed both Darius Slayton and Wendell Robinson, while Saquon will look to have another 100-plus yard game. As for the Seahawks, could we see another massive game for Kenneth Walker III, while Marquise Goodwin looks to benefit from an injured DK Metcalf if he doesn't see the field this week. And finally, Monday night, we'll see if Joe Burrow can put up another almost 500-yard game as they face the Browns. Joe Shiesty is flying high, and so are his receivers, who at any point can benefit from the throwing ability. Whether it's a couple yards out or he's throwing bombs, these Bengals receivers are finding the end zone. For another Browns, Jacoby Brissett will want to find the end zone himself. Putting up a near-perfect performance last week, he'll look to put up similar numbers along with finding Amari Cooper in the end zone. And when he needs some rest, he'll rely on Nick Chubb to run down their defense and find the way into the end zone. And as for the Fantasy League, the focus relies heavily on the top 2 teams, the Good Old Days and Gum Soup, who are both 6-1. Both teams will be looking at their quarterbacks to put up big numbers to help create a cushion in the off chance that a player on their roster doesn't put up an average amount of points. But this will be no easy feat, as O Highmark has Justin Jefferson ready to take off to help bring down halt to Good Old Days' win streak. As for Gum Soup's opponent, Juan Moore Times quarterback also comes off his bye, and we all know what Josh Allen has been doing this season. Just over the hump, this fantasy season seems to be flying by. We're starting to see the quality of teams' depth as bye weeks and continued injuries play a huge role. There's still some time to make trades to try and make a playoff push, while for others they'll be playing to simply avoid the bottom so they don't have to be reminded of their losing record all next season. But that'll be all for this weekly recap. Be sure to hit that like button if you're enjoying the NFL and fantasy football content, and leave a comment with a hot take that you have heading into week 8. Mine this week, we get a glimpse of a younger Rodgers, and he slugs it out with Josh Allen for a Packers win. With the 3rd and Long Dynasty League, this is Commissioner signing off.